Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Stay Connected with the Worcester Senior Center. I'm your host, Dr. Michael Hirsch, the Medical Director for the Division of Public Health for the City of Worcester, and this is our December show. December is a wondrous month, right? It's always been a joyous kind of feeling because, Thanksgiving is over and everyone's waiting for Christmas, Hanukkah, Diwali frequently falls in December. It's a great month of celebration. Even in the pagan times, people were very scared about the darkness and the short days, and everybody was worried. Is this the end of the world? And to get over that, they had these celebrations, and it carried forth right through into the legends of Christmas that we celebrate these days. So I have always loved the month of December because generally there's this kind of feeling that comes over everybody of generosity, peace on earth. These are properties that you'd like to maintain all the year round, but unfortunately it does seem to wear off a little bit each year in January and February. But for now, we got a nice month ahead of us. So for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff, the daffodil is the flower for December. It's kind of odd because it doesn't bloom in December, but that's the one that they have picked. And the turquoise is the stone. Turquoise is a beautiful stone. It's kind of like that beautiful bluish green color. If you've ever been to the American Southwest, there's a lot of turquoise out there. The indigenous people make wonderful jewelry out of it. It's a beautiful stone. I have a lot to say about December and what happens in December, some big dates to know about, some public health things we'll talk about. I guess the only two things that I found of super interest for you all that are watching, it's National Fruitcake Month, which I don't know about you, I'm not a huge fan of fruitcakes. And it's also National Eggnog Month. Now that's something I can get into. I really love the texture and the taste. Those two things are frequent flyers at the Christmas time holiday table. And I hope if you get one that you think of me when you have your first bite of fruitcake. Now, as far as other things that we commemorate in December, mostly what we're commemorating is just the notion of international peace. And I think, as I told you, that's a wonderful thing to aspire to have international peace. There are several wars going on all over the Middle East and the Balkan area and in Africa, and they if you do follow the news, it's a very depressing thing to see what's happening in all those three places. But maybe this month will inspire us to pursue peace. So let's run down some of the dates. December 1st, interestingly, another bizarre fact, it's Eat a Red Apple Day. Where that comes from? Supposedly Johnny Appleseed. Eat a Red Apple Day. Well, we know that an apple a day keeps the doctor away, so maybe I'll stay away from you if you all eat a red apple. But it's a delicious fruit, and we have tons of them here in New England thanks to the fact that Johnny Appleseed, who was born in Leominster, planted tons of apple trees all over New England on his way out to the Middle West. Really, he went as far as the Illinois area before he passed away. So that's an important date. December 6th is a very important date for people in my profession of trauma and pediatric surgery, because that's the date in which the famous Halifax harbor explosion happened. I think I've talked to you about this in past December broadcasts, but back in 1917, when World War I was raging, a munitions ship in Halifax's beautiful harbor collided with essentially a tugboat and exploded and caused such a massive explosion that first it caused the dock and an area along the wharf to catch on fire. Then it caused a tsunami where all of the water from the harbor kind of emptied out and poured into the first 2 or 3 streets from the actual wharf. And everything was immediately freezing because the temperature was bitter cold. And because the explosion was so massive, it was actually heard in Boston. So you know how loud that must have been. And it broke every window for about a 30-mile radius around Halifax. So it's been called the blizzard of glass because it happened at 9:04 a.m. and all the little school children were already in school. They saw first, before the actual explosion, a lot of the chemicals that were loaded onto the ammunition ship had started to evaporate and cause this rainbow spectrum of crazy colors over the harbor. So they were watching this from the windows, and then the windows blew out, and many children were injured from shards of glass going everywhere. About 2,000 people were killed in this explosion. 35,000 homes were destroyed, and somewhere between 10 and 20,000 people were left homeless. The call went out for help because Halifax's medical community couldn't absorb this amount of fatality and injury, and Boston responded. And a team went up there led by Dr. William Ladd, who was the chief of pediatric surgery in the Harvard system. And he spent most of the next 2 months doing operations on kids that had terrible injuries from shards of glass going through their face, through their necks, through their chests, through their bellies. And the people of Halifax were so grateful that ever since that time, they every Christmas send a beautiful Christmas tree to Boston. And this year, you might have seen, Mayor Wu of Boston actually went up to the ceremony where the tree was actually cut down in front of her eyes, and she was able to receive it, and it's going to be delivered down to Boston, and it's always lit up on December 6th to commemorate the sacrifice of the folks from the medical group that came from Boston to help in Halifax. The very next day, December 7th, is what President Roosevelt said, a day that will live in infamy. That's when the Japanese Imperial Navy attacked our naval base in Hawaii at Pearl Harbor and caused almost 3,000 deaths there. It came as a complete surprise, although there's been a lot of conspiracy theories as to how much of a surprise it really was. People have speculated that there was knowledge that this attack was coming, but they needed an excuse to enter World War II. I don't think that as a naval man, and FDR was Secretary of the Navy before he became president, he would have wanted to see what happened in that harbor where so many ships were destroyed, including the USS Arizona, which many of you know still is on the bottom of the harbor leaking oil, and there's a beautiful memorial above it where almost 1,100 sailors met their death aboard that boat. So that's an array of some pretty incredible dates. December 13th is important to me because we're doing our annual gun buyback. This will be our 23rd annual gun buyback for the Worcester County area. We have two major receiving sites for weapons. If you have a weapon that you want to dispose of, you'll get a reimbursement of $50 for a rifle, $100 for a pistol, and $150 for a semi-automatic rifle or pistol, and $25 if you have a replica gun. And we've been doing this now, as I said, for 23 years, and we've collected almost 5,000 weapons. And it's something that's supported heavily by District Attorney Early, the Worcester Police Department, the Worcester Department of Public Health, UMass Trauma Center, and our injury prevention program at UMass. So it's a wonderful collaboration. And more recently, we have gone a step further. We take the crushed up guns and we make them into garden tools that we then distribute to community gardeners all over the Central Mass area. So we actually are, making food out of guns. So it's a very nice concept, and I still think that it has made a difference here in the community, raising awareness about the importance of being a responsible gun owner, safe storage, and keeping the guns locked, unloaded, away from children. And if you can't do that, bring it in and we'll give you your reimbursement. We also give away trigger locks on that. December 14th is the actual date of the Sandy Hook massacre. And you remember in 2012, the horrific mass shooting that killed 20 children and 6 adults in Sandy Hook, Connecticut. Still one of the most horrific mass shootings that we've ever seen in the country. It didn't stimulate what I was hoping would happen, would be more aggressive monitoring of who possesses weapons and restricting access to people that had clear-cut evidence of mental illness or instability. But we have some very strict laws now in Massachusetts and in Connecticut where Sandy Hook happened, and our firearm fatality rate in Massachusetts is second only to Hawaii's. So I think some good came out of that tragedy. And December 15th is a date that people celebrate in terms of it's kind of be aware of pedestrians crossing the street. You remember the song about the traffic is terrific in these Christmas carols that we sing, and it is, and the traffic is terrific, and people are jutting into the streets back and forth all day long, and it's very important to be aware of pedestrians. Many of them are not paying as close attention to the traffic as they should. They're on their phones. They're not crossing at the crosswalks, so be aware of that. On December 16th, we commemorate the beginning of the longest and costliest battle in the European theater in World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. Battle of the Bulge was a last-ditch effort by Hitler and his Nazi army to try to split the Allied forces by driving a wedge between the British forces that were holed up in Holland and Belgium and the American forces, which were holed up in Belgium and Luxembourg. and driving to Antwerp, which was a major port at the time. On the way, Hitler hoped to restore a lot of his petroleum reserves because they were running low on gas. Everything depended on timing. And our American troops that were stationed in the Belgian woods, in the Argonne forest, were understaffed, undermanned, had very little ammunition, weren't really outfitted for the cold. That winter was called the Hunger Winter. It was the worst winter in European history for the 20th century. Super cold and very, very little food around. So we were caught without the right intelligence, didn't see that buildup of men and tanks that was going on the German side of the Argonne forest, and they swept through. In the first week, it really looked like we were back on our heels and maybe Hitler's plan was going to work. But fortunately, we showed a lot of grit and resilience in slowing them down just enough so they couldn't advance easily. They used up a lot of their fuel, and a lot of their tanks dried up from not having fuel. And on top of that, we had General George Patton, who was 100 miles south of the conflict, who was able to pivot and go 100 miles north in the middle of a snowstorm in 3 days to help relieve the critical crossroads town of Bastogne in Belgium. I had the privilege of making a trip there. I couldn't believe the terrain. I couldn't believe that the foxholes that the men were in are still there, and it wasn't much cover at all. And they were kind of in the middle of a forest. So what the Germans did was they poured, howitzer shells, cannon shells into the trees above these foxholes, and the splintering of the wood caused these projectiles of wood to go everywhere, and they killed many of our soldiers. So over 9,000 American troops were killed there. The battle went on for a full 5 weeks. It wasn't until January 25th that the area was called secure, and what was left of the tattered army of the German Reich retreated back into the Rhineland. It was a key victory, because if we had lost then, it probably would have caused a diplomatic kerfuffle where we would have been potentially signing truces with the Nazis in the hope, the Nazis hoped that we would join them in their effort to fight the Russians, who were coming fast from the east. So December 16th is a anniversary to remember. And people that fought in that battle came back with tremendous scars. It was so cold. Many of them developed a dreaded problem with their feet, because their feet would get wet with snow and then dry and then get wet again. It was called trench foot. And there were a lot of people that ended up with amputations and frostbite and all different kind of problems. A horrific battle. Then the next days I would talk about for December, a funny one, December 23rd, is Festivus, which was made famous by a Seinfeld episode in which George Costanza's dad, Frank Costanza, talked about this holiday, which actually did exist before Seinfeld. It basically is annual airing of grievances. And it's not religious. You just supposedly gather your family around and everybody can rant about what is wrong and what they would like to see improved. But it is kind of humorous to think about people actually doing that. And it doesn't have a Christmas tree. It just has a empty pole that you're supposed to sit around. It's kind of goofy. And I admit it's kind of goofy. Then on the 24th and 25th, we have Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Wonderful holidays. This is, again, a little more pressure on you than the Thanksgiving, because usually if you're a Christian, or if you're not a Christian but just celebrate the holiday, a lot of pressure on you to find good gifts, maybe to erect a Christmas tree. But it's so colorful, it's so beautiful. I tried to wear one of my, wintry ties to celebrate the month. And if only, as Ebenezer Scrooge found out in Christmas Carol, you can keep the spirit of Christmas with you the whole year long. That would be a wonderful thing. And then on the 31st, we have our New Year's Eve celebration. It's the turning over into a new year. 2026 is upon us. And we have wonderful events here in Worcester. First Night Worcester. It's going to be always lots of things for families to do. And I would urge you to take advantage of some of them. Some places do fireworks, and we all wait for the famous ball to drop in Times Square. It's a feeling of kind of, you make your New Year's resolutions and you wish for a better 2026. And I would say overall, 2025 has been pretty tough. As I mentioned the last couple of episodes that we've done together, it's the fear factor that has been so rampant in the community. Fear of what ICE is doing, fear of what Doge was doing, fear of getting sick. We'll talk a little bit about the public health aspect of this. Also fear of vaccinations to prevent you from getting sick, because of all the disinformation coming out of Atlanta and Washington. So maybe we can put that fear away in 2026 and realize that the country is going to get back on the right track. It's definitely got, I think, off the track a little bit, and it's going to make a course correction. In that process, I think we will be able to come together again. I know we've been very divided about politics and things, but the one thing that the Christmas holiday is supposed to instill in us is a feeling of joy and peace and love for our fellow humans. And what can be bad about that? Now, as far as the public health goes, I will tell you, so far, COVID has been on the run. It did spike up in September, but the October numbers were much better. The early November numbers started to spike a little bit, so there is some concern that maybe us all going indoors is going to cause another spike in COVID. But the COVID variant that's causing the problems now does not seem to have the same punch as earlier versions of COVID, like Omicron and Delta and the original COVID virus. So we still are recommending that, again, if you're senior over the age of 60, if you have heart disease, if you have diabetes, if you have obesity as a problem, if you have autoimmune problems, you should definitely get a booster this fall. The flu shot has not been very popular. We have been hearing lots of stories about a lot of unused vaccines in venues that are providing it, in drugstores and other places. I'm worried about that because the group that was supposed to decide about what variety of flu we were going to face was disbanded before this vaccine came out. So they took a educated guess as to what was going to be in this flu shot. If you're a senior, there is a super flu vaccine that I would recommend you get, particularly if you have some of those comorbidities, those other medical problems that I mentioned when we were talking about COVID. That will keep you less likely to make your way into the hospital for problems with that. RSV, which was the other three-headed monster that we faced a couple of Christmases ago, seems to be on the down low a little bit more. And we'll have to see what happens with the December numbers. But so far, it looks like it's staying in a controllable state. What we do need to at least make you aware of is that towards the end of November, the first human case of H5N5 bird flu occurred. Now, the one that we've been tracking and the one that caused 70 humans to get bird flu in 2024 and one person died was H5N1. So H5N5 is a new variety. It infected a poultry farmer out in the Pacific Northwest whose free-range chickens intermingled with migrating waterfowl coming from Canada back south for the winter. And those waterfowl were infected and got his chickens infected. And unfortunately, the only thing you can do when that happens for a chicken farmer is to kill your flock because you want to prevent the spread. So what does that mean? The person who got it, this chicken farmer, is not severely ill. He had flu-like symptoms, achy bones and a low-grade fever, a little bit of a chest cough. So it wasn't a devastating infection. But what it does show is that bird flu is trying to figure out how to get to us. There still has been no evidence of human-to-human transmission of bird flu. It's always been from an infected animal population to a human. But the fact that H5N5 even exists is an indicator that H5N1 is mutating all the time. And we have to just keep being vigilant. We're being very vigilant here. So far in the Northeast, we have not had any cases of H5N5. But we're not anywhere near as geared up against bird flu as we should be. The folks that make our mRNA vaccines were given a contract to mass produce H5N1 vaccine, but they were told to stand down by the Trump administration. So if it happens that bird flu figures out how to go from human to human, we're going to have some catching up to do. And we will try to do our best to inform you and alert you. We're not going to get a lot of help from the CDC. They're not big fans of the mRNA kind of vaccine, but we believe in it very strongly. And the scientists in New England really are very responsible for developing this technique, and it's going to save millions of lives, including fighting cancer. That's the latest application that we've been seeing, and the test results are still pending, but some very encouraging signs that you can alter the genetics of cancer cells using these kind of mRNA vaccines. And the other kind of newer disease that I think merits mentioning, and we talked about it at the Board of Health meeting in November, is alpha-gal syndrome. So there is a tick called the Lone Star tick, because it originated in Texas, that has been expanding its territory, making its way north. So if you follow this scenario, a hunter was out in the woods in New Jersey. He bagged himself a deer, but also in the process got bitten by a tick. He ate the deer meat and got severely ill, but he recovered. And he just thought, it's maybe like undercooked venison or whatever. But 2 weeks later, he had a hamburger, and he went into anaphylactic shock and died. So the Lone Star tick has properties that once it bites you, it can make you allergic to red meat. And so right now we don't have a solution for this, except to say we've been talking for years about being careful about ticks. You know, if you're a woodsman, if you're a hunter, if you're, loving to run through the woods, even now when there might not be a hard frost quite yet, you should still do tick checks and get rid of the ticks if you find them on yourself. And if they cause kind of a red halo kind of wound around the original tick bite, it's something that you ought to consult your primary care doc about getting an antibiotic like doxycycline on board. Even the 3-day course will limit the likelihood that this alpha-gal syndrome happens to you. But it's something that we have to really pay attention to. Now, I think last month I talked a little bit about this crazy problem of the screwworm. The screwworm is the larva of the botfly, and the botfly lays its eggs in the surface skin of cows, deer, and some other livestock like pigs. And the eggs grow into this screwworm, and if you happen to ingest meat that has a screwworm in it, that screwworm will bore its way through your intestines and cause great harm. For years it was kept under wraps because scientists in the 60s developed a sterile fly that would mate with the mother botfly, and the botfly could not produce eggs. But that program is in jeopardy because of all the DOGE-related cuts to the Department of Agriculture. And there's a lot of concern now also because the Trump administration has made an easy conduit for Argentinian beef, which may not be as closely inspected, to come up north to help out their economy. I'm just saying you should definitely make sure when you buy your meat, don't get it off the side of a truck. Don't eat venison if you're not 100% sure about where it was. And if you cook meat, make sure you cook it thoroughly, because those parasites will potentially cause you great harm if they're undercooked. So these are the public health things that keep me up at night, and it's mostly because the USDA is understaffed, the CDC is understaffed, and the disinformation keeps coming out about really what's the true nature of the public health things that we face. There was just an article coming out of the Mass General that there's a slightly higher incidence of neurodevelopmental problems in the children of women who got COVID when they were pregnant. This is the first time that this has been the case. So the notion that CDC is not recommending that pregnant women get the COVID vaccine will probably be something that we pay for with an increased number of neurodevelopmentally damaged babies. This is the world we live in, and I'm hoping that 2026 is better, because I have a feeling that there's going to be some reversal of some of the very bad trends that were established when the new administration came in 2025. At least that's my hope. In the meantime, Governor Healy, our Mass Department of Public Health Director, Robbie Goldstein, and the Department of Public Health here in Worcester, we're all holding our ground. We're in a consortium of 6 states to kind of make scientific choices and decisions based on those choices, so that we can keep you safe. So that's what I'm going to wish for you in December, is a peaceful season, a safe season, one in which you can enjoy your family and have the kind of holiday season you'll look back on with joy. So thanks a lot. I appreciate you letting me into your TV set to talk to you each month, and I'll see you again in January. Take good care.